The following Conscious Consumer Network recording of a live broadcast is available to purchase in high definition at ethymarket.com. Support free and independent media by becoming a CCN pledger. For €10 a month, you can have unlimited access to CCN high definition downloads at ethymarket.com. Ethymarket, the ethical marketplace for conscious consumers.
This is For the Love of Learning, Voices of the Alternative Education Movement. Be inspired by the voices of visionaries, changemakers, and ordinary, extraordinary people who do what they do all for the love of learning.
This is For the Love of Learning, Voices of the Alternative Education Movement. I'm Lainie Liberti, and this is episode number 25. The theme of tonight's episode is Unschooling Around the World. Tonight we will speak with three very special women from around the world who are unschooling their children. What is unschooling? It is an educational method and philosophy that advocates learner-chosen activities as a primary means for learning. Unschooling students learn through natural life experiences, which include play, household responsibilities, personal interests, curiosity, internship, and the world around them. Unschooling encourages exploration of activities initiated by the children themselves, believing that the more personal learning is, the more meaningful and deep the learning will be. Tonight, we are exploring unschooling with our three incredible panelists from around the world and have the opportunity to see what the world around them looks like and how it influences the unschooling world of their children. I'm going to give a brief introduction to each of our panelists, then we'll start the conversation. Although these introductions are brief, we have more information about each of our panelists on the show notes page located at consciousconsumernetwork.tv, and look for the show notes page for episode number 25. There you will find more extensive information about each of our panelists' backgrounds and links to their projects and websites. So let's get the show started. First, I'd like to introduce you to EJ. EJ is a prolific author, speaker, lecturer, doctor of applied biology and biotechnology at Covenant University, Nigeria. EJ is of Indian, Iranian, English, and African descent. After graduating summa cum laude from Women's Christian College, EJ proceeded to seek a doctorate degree in one of Nigeria's most prestigious universities. For her PhD work, EJ focused on discovering a new anti-malarial compounds in previously untested indigenous plants and their associated therapies. It was during that time she experienced a seismic shift in her perceptual framework, a profound challenge to her previous assumptions about the way the world works. Her new paradigm-altering questions inspired further investigations into some of the hidden assumptions that have shaped her experiences, hopes, and expectations as an educator, a scientist, and a social innovator. From that moment, EJ's perspective of her world shifted. EJ is a passionate mother to one daughter and a committed life partner to Bio, who was recently on our panel about higher education alternatives. Welcome, EJ. We are so honored to have you with us tonight.
Thank you, Lainie. It's definitely exciting to be here. Thank you for this opportunity to share. Thank you.
Next, let's meet Tami. Tami is the mother of 6 children, ages 11 to 2. Their larger family is American nomadic, sometimes expat, and originally from Atlanta, Georgia, USA. Tami's family is currently enjoying their summer, staying with extended family back in Georgia as they transform from living on the frozen tundra soon to move to the bustling city of Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Tami and her family are Christian. She loves home birth and occasionally works as a doula. She loves homeschooling and the richness of life that unschooling and world schooling have brought her and her family. And we are so excited to have Tami on tonight's panel. So welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Next, let's meet Zakia. Zakia grew up in the dark days of apartheid in South Africa with its radically segregated suburbs and radically segregated education system. She was 23 when South Africa held its first inclusive elections, and she celebrated with the rest of the country at the exhilaration of voting for the first time. But she wasn't that excited about the opening of the school system. She was still trying to figure out what the hype was about. It looked like drill and kill to her. So even before her kids, she and her husband spent an endless amount of time thinking of ways to change how children are educated. So when children arrived, it was a natural progression to simply opt out from school. Finding support was a major challenge as nobody in her circle supported her decision to homeschool, let alone unschool. Having survived the first years, Zakia decided that there was a definite need to form a supportive community that can provide the much needed support she never had. With that in mind, the Unschoolers in South Africa Facebook group was formed, and the idea of Unschoolers Camp was also born. This November will be the 5th annual Unschoolers Camp in South Africa. Her partner and 3 kids are still her greatest teacher. So welcome. We'll start the conversation with you. Could you please share with us what unschooling looks like in your family and how the world around you experiences how you and your family do unschool?
Okay. So I have 3 kids. The older 2 boys are 16 and 17, and my daughter's 8. I would say my daughter, my 8-year-old, is my truly unschooled child. And my eldest is the experiment because, you know, I was alone. Hubby and I were alone in this journey. We didn't have a lot of support. There was a lot of self-doubt. There was a lot of, you know, trying to impose things. But, you know, I have 3 very strong and spirited children. So they didn't take a lot of my control and a lot of my doubts, and they actually gave me a lot of the reassurance that I needed. So, you know, when we started unschooling, we didn't really know that the concept existed. We just felt like we could wait a little longer. You know, the kids were playing a lot, they were learning a lot, and we really couldn't justify interfering with them. With how they were growing so beautifully. And I think that hasn't stopped, to be quite honest. At some point on the internet, I found out that there's this group of homeschoolers. And at some point, I found out that some of these homeschoolers unschool. And that's when I realized, hey, that's what we do. So how it looks in our house is there's a lot of internet use, there's a lot of YouTubing, there's a lot of online gaming, which really is a reflection of what hubby and I do, because he's a software developer and I do communications, but all from home, all from my computer. So they are very much a reflection of us. Yeah.
Tami, why don't you go ahead and share a little bit about what unschooling looks like in your family and how the world around you really influences your family's learning.
A lot of times when I actually talk to people about unschooling and try to get their head wrapped around it, is I tell them honestly, it looks, a lot of the time, it looks like a lot of nothing. Like I'm very introverted, and my kids follow suit. We're all kind of introverted, so it seems like a lot of nothing, a lot of kind of private stuff they're doing and investigating stuff and a lot of internal stuff, and then just all of a sudden you'll see like an explosion of, I didn't know where, I don't know where you figured that out. And so I mean, for us, it's just this kind of roller coaster dynamic of them picking up little pieces here and there, and all of a sudden it fusing together. And one of the things in a larger family is really nice is, to see all the interaction and all the learning that happens in between children, and, in between, even the 2-year-old and the 11-year-old, and all the little pieces coming together. I was on a homeschooling forum recently, and, it's summertime for, the U.S., and the school year will start up again in August, September. And so like all the regular homeschoolers are thinking, oh, I'm planning for next year and stuff like that. And I thought, my plan for next year is we're going to get through this move. We're going to see a lot of really cool stuff when we move. And I got to make sure we have good internet when we move. Because my kids, a lot of them, they're really into doing stuff on the internet, making, doing YouTube stuff and Minecraft and stuff like that. And so, yeah, that's, we basically just, ooh, this is cool. Let's go figure out this. And that's kind of how we do things.
And how much does the world around you influence, what the interests are? And are their interests sparked from living in different places in the world?
I think so. I mean, like a lot of that is just kind of background learning to them. Like none of their kind of overt and, really showy interest. You can't see the stuff going on, but like a lot of the stuff you'll see, like they picked up pieces and stuff like that. Like, I mean, we took a road trip to the beach recently and saw some dolphins there and stuff like that. And they're pulling pieces talking about dolphins that are mammals and stuff like that. And, finding stuff on the beach and little hermit crabs and kids talking about this is their habitat, and just goofy stuff like that. So, I mean, a lot of it is kind of threading together in the background, and it is not like this big showy thing that, oh, because we visited this place, now they have this huge interest in, this thing to this place. It just kind of all weaves together in sort of a background and overarching view about culture and different people, and I don't know, like, that an understanding of, I think my kids do have a greater understanding of the idea of culture, which I think a lot of kids in suburban America kind of miss. Like even in suburban America, I think the idea is you feel like, well, we don't have culture, that's something other people have. And when I think our kids realize that they do have their own culture, and they do, it's okay to have their own culture, and it's unique, and it's a good thing to share with other people, and it's not, just something that other people have. And so I don't know, it's sort of a background intermingling, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. Let's move over to EJ. EJ, I'm curious to hear from you. I know your daughter is younger, and I was wondering, well, how unschooling looks like in your world, in your lives, and if at all, how does the external world around you play a part into the actual learning?
Thank you, Lainie. Like you earlier said, my daughter Alethea is just she's turning 2 in 8 days, and we're super excited. Yeah, but most of our unschooling right now, I would say, is centered around unschooling ourselves. Bio and I, in many ways, have to unschool ourselves because we are thoroughly schooled individuals. We went through school, toppers, doing everything the right way. We were totally compliant in so to speak. So most of the unschooling right now is for us. And that has been an exciting adventure because it gets you to question the small things. And to think about that, I come from a highly multiracial background. My mother is British, Iranian, Indian, and my dad's African, and then I married an African. So we're totally mixed, and Alethea is totally mixed. And both cultures, both from India and Africa, it's a very collectivist culture. We are very close-knit, and everyone has an opinion, everyone has a say. And so we get a year full when they hear that we intend to unschool. And most of the time we hear 2 professors and their daughter would never go to school. I mean, that must be ridiculous. I mean, you're destroying her life. How could you do this? I mean, what happens to her future? What will she do? How would she compare to a child that has been schooled? I mean, these are questions that are constantly asked. And even though we know it's coming from a place of love, I mean, they could be really exhausting and hard to deal with on a day-to-day basis, especially for us who are first-time unschoolers and, in a sense, first-generational unschoolers, because, I mean, our whole family has been thoroughly schooled. But so we deal with a lot of personal unschooling. And if I may, I just remembered a story and something that happened to us, I think about 4 days ago. We were at a family event, and a long-lost relative came in, and she sat down next to me with her little boy, who was about 4 months older than Alethea. And Alethea was having her cookies then, and she offered this little boy while her mother and I exchanged pleasantries. And the boy looked up at his mother, as in to ask, "May I?" And the mother gave him an approving nod, and he took a biscuit. And Alethea continued eating her cookies, and later on, the mother asked the boy, "Would you like some chips?" And he said yes. And my daughter immediately said, "Mama, I want a chip." And I mean, I didn't have any, so the mother offered her some chips. But my daughter decided to take the whole bag of chips as opposed to taking one. And I was terribly embarrassed because these are people that I haven't seen in a long time. And then this girl takes the whole bag. And so I smiled and I told her, take a chip from the packet, which she did. And she said, "Thank you." And as soon as she finished her chip, she said, "I want some more." And I was embarrassed, filled with shame, guilt that I didn't think she may need a chip. I mean, I should have brought some chips for her. I know she likes them. I should have taught her not to ask for more. I mean, she's supposed to ask me in private, "Can I have some more? Is it okay?" I mean, this is a 2-year-old I'm talking about. But still, I felt that immediate guilt that I should have taught her not to do so. However, I mean, my cousin offered her some chips, and I looked at Alethea, willing her with all my might, not to take it, just say, "No, thank you, Auntie." But no, that didn't happen. She happily continued eating her chips. And it got me thinking, I mean, I really need to be unschooled in terms of, this is what I want for myself. I want to see something I want and go for it. I want to be bold enough, not afraid of what society will say, or not afraid of, the stigma that I would be. I mean, this is what I have been struggling all my life. And here's my daughter doing it. And instead of me feeling a sense of pride or joy, I'm covered with embarrassment. And I shared the story with Bayo, and he was laughing at me. And he said, "It's not just you. I feel the same way too." So right now, unschooling in our house is a lot about Bayo and I, and getting people, especially our family, if not totally accept, to come to terms with, this is our decision and this is what we want to do in our house. So that's what unschooling at home looks like for us now.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. You know, many of the experts within the unschooling world say that the first step of unschooling is indeed unschooling the parent. And you just demonstrated perfectly what that looks like. So thank you so much for sharing that. I want to ask you a question. Because your daughter is so young, and you're going into this very intentionally, what I wonder is how much of the learning about unschooling is coming from just watching a child grow up and do what they do naturally?
Yeah, I would say lots. I remember when I first told my mom that I know I don't want to send Alethea to school. I don't know what I want to do with her, but I know school is not for her. I mean, my mom often told me that I was this cheery, happy, go child, but that's not what I remember. I mean, I remember being socially awkward, shy, ridiculed constantly for being absolutely different. So, I mean, I was definitely sure that I did not want her to go through that same thing and for her to lose what I lost at that age. You know, I don't want her to develop that fear of failure or of being ridiculed. So what right now I see is my mom, even when she sees Alethea every day and the way she engages with different things, it's amazing. My mom tells me from time to time, did you teach her that? And I'm like, no, I mean, there's no teaching in our house. I mean, Alethea learns so much from day-to-day interaction, not just with children of her age, but with people much older. And the whole children need to be paired up in their peer groups, otherwise learning will not be possible, is kind of a myth to me. I mean, because this girl learns so much, and that is a learning experience for us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And this is a beautiful foundation to build upon for this show, and I can't wait to get into some of these deeper conversations. I want to actually jump back over to Zakaya. I want to ask you, you've got two older children, and then you've got the younger child who you said is 8 years old. That was your real unschooling experiment. Did you notice a difference in the way that your 8-year-old addressed the world around, I'm not sure, her or him, versus the way that your older kids did? Her.
Yes, there's such a huge difference. So with the eldest, with both the two boys, you know, I did try to impress on them, you know, social politeness, etc. I thought it was important so that it reflects well on unschooling. And then I later learned, although I didn't really focus on the please and thank you, because I do believe in being authentic, and I really didn't want them saying thank you to anybody if they didn't mean it. I didn't want them apologizing for things that they did wrong if they didn't actually feel like, you know, they were really sorry. I'd much rather take the longer time to discuss what the situation, so that they could at the end of that decide and make the decision that yes, they do want to apologize or not. But when it comes to my 8-year-old, you know, I'd already unschooled myself considerably, so she saw she saw a different side of me with her brothers and with her. So she's really very strong-willed, strong-spirited. So she would say things like, I don't need your opinion, you know, I have a brain of my own. She would say, well, we were arguing about whether Freddie Mercury is better than Adam Lambert. And, you know, I grew up with Freddie Mercury. So eventually she says to me, he's not weird, he's just being himself, and I can respect that, but I don't like his music. I like Adam Lambert's music. And that was settled, you know. she's really strong. She speaks up without being rude. She speaks up for herself. She can express what she knows herself. And I think that is our ultimate goal, is for our kids to know themselves. And in this journey, you know, Ahmed and I need to learn to know ourselves, because we didn't have the benefit of growing up authentic. So we also learning about that. And a lot of the time we learn about ourselves from them, how we react to them, their observations of us, how we relate in situations. My boys, I think my eldest got the worst of it. And even he tells me, you know, Mom, you didn't know any better, so you did the best you could with what you knew, which is, I mean, you know, that was great. That was great. I learned from them. That's why I call them my greatest teachers. So you can definitely see the difference in their wiring, in how the free-spiritedness comes out stronger in the younger one. And I can definitely attribute it to me being, hubby and I both being much more relaxed with her.
How much deschooling did you have to go through, you and your husband have to go through, in order to feel comfortable with your decisions and your interactions with your children?
It was a very long process, I have to be honest. So, you know, things like reading, I couldn't relax until I knew that they knew how to read. And I also wasn't convinced that they would learn how to read naturally the way they learned everything else naturally. But I also have this tendency to try and research everything. So when I was trying to research whether to do whole word or phonics or psycholinguistic and, you know, find the best reading program out there, they self-taught. So again, they taught me to, you know, let it go. So with my 8.5-year-old, I'm really proud to say that she's not reading yet, and I really am not stressed. I honestly am not. With the boys, I was. I have to be honest about that. There were a lot of things that it took a long time for me. With my husband, I think he was born an unschooler. You know, it comes so naturally to him. So he was my coach in many ways. And the great thing is that we both have a shared vision of what we wanted and how we wanted to raise our children. So there wasn't that battle. But for myself, I would say it took, so he's 17 now. I would say, you know, I think I'm still learning, to be quite honest. I don't think we'll be truly unschooled ever, our generation, you know, but I'm so curious to see what our kids would end up being like as adults.
I want to ask another question to this panel, and maybe for EJ this may not be an issue, but I'll go ahead and address the question directly to you, Zakia. But I also want Tami to chime in. I want to know what specifically the role of technology plays through your children's self-guided voyage.
Okay, so there's definitely a huge social aspect to it, especially for my boys. A lot of their relationships revolve around people who play similar games. So they play online, they interact all the time, they have something called TeamSpeak, so they talk a lot, and then they make arrangements to go to cinemas, to watch movies together, or they have sleepovers at our house or at friends' houses. They have, and then also, again, because we're all online, sometimes we joke and we say we have a Facebook curriculum, because they're both on Facebook. I have secret groups, you know, a history-oriented one, a philosophy-oriented one, one just family stuff. And, with husband and I would both share a lot in there, saying, boys, read this. This would be interesting. But it's got to the point where they now share things with us and say, read this, Mom. This, you know, you've been worried about this. Why don't you read this? Or this is interesting. Or I know you have this passion for history and this might be great. So it's, you know, it's now become collaborative. It's not us saying you need to know this. It's they interacting as equal partners, saying you would benefit from this. So there isn't a power relation really. And then, YouTube has been great in terms of watching documentaries. In fact, anything they really need to know, their first step would be YouTube and Google, etc. So they're not really dependent on us. They're fairly independent. And then they come to us to get our opinion on something, which they actually never buy into, and they have their own opinions. So I sometimes wonder why they ask me. But I think that's all mothers have this issue. So it plays. I actually can't imagine how it would be without technology. Although I know that there are families here that have very little technology out of choice, and their kids are still great, still know a lot. It's just for us that is the primary thing that we use.
And Tami, did you want to jump in?
Yeah. Our family, my oldest son especially, he uses the internet to kind of keep up with some of his friends, like back in Georgia or Abu Dhabi, and right now he mainly keeps in touch with them through playing Minecraft with them. And my kids also, we do a lot of YouTube watching. Hi, this is my 2-year-old. And my little ones also, they enjoy a lot of iPad apps and stuff like that, and a lot of those things and we're kind of a techie household. We like technology. It doesn't bother us. And so a lot of times, like if I see something, an app that's interesting, like there was this, human body app or something like that, I'll just put it on the iPad and see if anybody's interested in it. And then, give it a week or two and, people are pointing out stuff about the human body and our digestive system and all kinds of stuff like that. So, I mean, for us, it's a really relaxed way to kind of introduce lots of different, things to the world, and it's low pressure, and so we enjoy it.
So you just mentioned something that it's a part of the unschooling strategy, especially for adults, and it's called strewing. You leave little things out, and you put things in the path to see if interest is sparked from something that's around our children without ever forcing it upon them. So you have just explained strewing from a technological perspective, and I think that's absolutely brilliant. So thank you, Tami. I want to move over to EJ, and I know that your daughter is young again, but you initially said that the unschooling process is really about your journey and Bio's journey. So, go ahead and contribute to the conversation in terms of the role that technology plays in your lives, and if it does actually extend to your daughter too.
Yeah, I don't think there's escaping technology in this day and age. I mean, amazingly, like I earlier said, she's barely 2, but I mean, technology has become a big part of her life, and I don't know whether this is good or not, because most of the time she sees her father and I on the internet, and she's learned that you could watch rhymes over YouTube, and she's so good at it that all you need is to leave your tab down and she knows how to go there and select what she wants to watch. And this worries me, because I'm wondering, would she imagine that all the great things that she needs to know about the world could only come from this little piece of technology? I mean, would she not engage with nature as itself? This is a constant worry of ours. And so we try to say, okay, should we now start restricting the access? I mean, is that what we should be doing? If we do so, is that unschooling? So where do we, it's just, technology has already become part of her unschooling, and we are trying to find a way to be okay with it and to allow her to engage outside also. So we constantly tried not to be attached to our laptops so that she sees that and probably learns from that. So yeah, it is a big part already in her life.
I was thinking about what you were saying about worrying about, you know, the role of technology and is it too much? And I think most parents nowadays, you know, kind of go over similar thoughts in their heads. And what's funny is, in my family, at least over the years, like my two oldest boys, you know, they're really into technology and YouTube, but my 8-year-old girl, who's, you know, had the same exposure, the same, you know, kind of no limits, you know, openness to technology, she's not a big fan. I mean, she wants to go outside and play in the mud and do stuff, and she'll give her older brothers a hard time sometimes for, you know, being on the computer too much. And so I joke that somehow we've managed to make a Luddite out of our in our techie home. So I think a lot of that is just temperament and just you know, it just feeds to, you know, their natural interest and stuff like that. And so it's not like, I don't know, that this thing is, you know, going to take them from something else. I think if everything is open, then they'll naturally go to what feeds them the best. So.
And I always just look at it as a tool. It's, you know, it's like a book, or it's like a field trip, or, I mean, all these other things that we provide for our children as facilitators and unschooling parents are tools to help facilitate their own interests and their own learning. So yeah, you know, I mean, it's a difficult balance. And I think, EJ, when you mentioned the thought that comes into your head about should I limit screen time, a lot of parents ask those questions in the unschooling world, and a lot of that has to do with their own paradigm shift, that they're not completely in the unschooling world yet in their own head. So, you know, it's a difficult process. So with that said, I actually want to ask a question about what community looks like to each one of these panelists. Is community only defined in your unschooling family as your family unit, or is it the extended family? Is it, you know, other unschoolers, or is it just the normal neighbors? And what role does that play in your child's learning?
For us right now, I think we're blessed to have a large community. I mean, it doesn't really comprise of many unschooling kids or unschoolers themselves, but we have unschooling parents who live around in Chennai, perhaps not too close to us, but we have a larger family unit and extended family also that we are constantly in contact with. And so she actually gets to interact with different kinds of people who have diverse opinions, speak many languages, and it's amazing. I mean, at this age, she speaks to me in 2 different languages already, and I have to constantly hold back not to make sure that, you know, her diction, or she's speaking English properly before she learns another language. I mean, she's learning 2 languages simultaneously and doing it so beautifully well. She interchanges words appropriately in the sentences, and it's really what do I say, encouraging to see that happen, because I did not teach her and no one else did, but just by interacting with this large group of people who talk different languages, she comes up to me constantly saying that she wants to cook, and she wants to make chapatis, for instance, and so I have to give her what she needs to make chapatis, and this girl is too. So I mean, I've really been the one who had asked Bio in the past, are you sure this is what we should do? I mean, I don't want to spoil our children's life. I mean, let's be sure, let's have a plan, let's organize this. Maybe a small curriculum on the side, you know, I was this controlling, I want to know we're doing it right. But since the day she was born, and I've been engaging with her, I know that, I mean, we are taking a step in a direction that will benefit her, that will not steal from her. So yeah, I mean, community here has been a big part of our life.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And Zakaya, why don't we jump back over to you? If you could share a little bit about what community looks like in your life.
Yeah, I think community was really always an important thing for me, and I think we did lack that at some point. So I had to put in quite a bit of effort to build a community around us. And I now, my 8-year-old has lots of, unschoolers that are friends that she's friends with. It's normal to her. And our unschooling community where I live in this part of South Africa is quite rich. It's quite active. We have monthly ice skating get-togethers. We have monthly picnics. The kids make their own arrangements to get together with each other. But it's also the parents. So the parents aren't really the parents of their friends. The parents are almost like sub-mothers or sub-fathers to all the kids. So if, when my kids one of my sons want to do, and it's not always technology, although we talk about it, they do other things. So my son wanted to do something on a canvas, and I've never done that before. He was chatting to one of the other mothers, what does he need to buy? She embraced it as a responsibility of hers as somebody who is an artist to help him out. Other mothers are web designers. They've made it well known, to the boys, not even directly to me, to the boys, that if you want to get involved in this, I'm really happy to help you along this process. So there's 3 levels. My understanding is that there are 3 levels. There's this child that is unschooling, and then there are the parents that are unschooling themselves or deschooling themselves in order to catch up with where their children are. And then there's the community, which is a learning society, and that community is really important. But there's, so beyond, although we lacked support in certain ways, there was always people that we know, friends of friends, who, knowing that my kids don't go to school, were always open and accessible to anything that they actually wanted to know. So, there wasn't that isolation, and if there was, that would worry me. And I think if we had a stronger community, it would be even greater. But it's small steps, and what we have now, in the group of unschoolers that I know personally, everybody's caring and sharing, and that's a really great foundation from which to build, a more interactive learning society, which is really the ultimate aim for all of us, I think.
Wonderful. And it was so beautifully organized. Thank you so much for your response. Why don't we jump on over to Tami? And Tami, the same question to you. Can you share a little bit about what community looks like in your life and how that plays a role in your child's learning?
I think for us, a lot of it was, since I'm introverted and my children are introverted, a lot of it was being okay with, especially during the younger years, not feeling like I have to force all this socialization on them and force all, them to be involved and push them to make all these friends. Especially my real little ones, interacting with their siblings is kind of enough. But for my oldest one, I'm kind of finding he's ready to kind of branch out and to develop deeper relationships with more people than, beyond our family and stuff like that. And so I'm looking to kind of build you know, ways for him to maintain longer relationships and stuff like that. And that's why when we lived in remote Alaska, the internet was actually really expensive and stuff like that. And so one of the reasons I kind of wanted to move was that I wanted a place where, you know, he could have that good internet connection so that he could maintain those connections with, you know, people he knows from Georgia and he's actually met other unschoolers online through his gaming and stuff like that. And so for him to be able to have those connections and stuff like that, I wanted to be in a place because I felt that was important for him. And so, because I mean, he's, you know, being introverted, you know, it takes him a long time to feel comfortable and to feel like he's made a connection with somebody. And so, you know, that doesn't always happen immediately when you meet somebody face to face. And so facilitating for him to build those connections over time was important for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you mention, I'm moving a little bit away from community, but I love how you mention you function as a family unit, Tami, and make the best decisions for the family based on all of your members' needs. That's really a huge part of the unschooling family, and that is its own community in a sense. And I do know that EJ, you actually left Nigeria because you wanted to create more community as well, more unschooling community. And, you know, those sorts of inspirations are not something that I believe a conventional family living in the United States would do. You know, they're rooted in one place, and it's all about, you know, having their kids fit into their world instead of starting the world from the nucleus of the family and expanding based on the needs of the family. So that's really incredible. Does anybody else have any other examples of the ways that their family shifted in one direction, or, you know, made certain decisions based on the family unit's need?
I guess, like you earlier said, us moving was a big, was something that we really, was a decision that was taken with that in mind. We knew that we could not, it was practically impossible for us to unschool Alethea while we were full-time professors in the university, and that would be, counterintuitive. And so we wanted to move to somewhere where we could unlearn ourselves. I mean, that environment would box us in and not allow us to see beyond the blinkers, you know? So we needed that space. We needed to reconnect with what we had lost. And I think that was one of the moves. And when we came over here also, we decided that whatever we would do would be what we always desired to do. We were not going to take up any job as such just because there needed to be the finances brought home, but we were going to do something that added value to us, something that we've always desired to do that probably in the past we've not been able to do. And so we had made that conscious decision even before Alethea was born, and we were in this constant quest for something in those lines. So probably, yeah, our move would be one of the greatest decisions we made, having unschooling in mind.
You know, I think making decisions that for the family as a whole, taking everybody into account, making sure that they're all happy is, it's just the right thing to do. But B, it makes life a lot easier if, you know, most people are happy. So when my daughter was a year old and the boys were like 9 and 10, I think, we sold our house and we really wanted to travel. And we started off in Cape Town. So I'm in Johannesburg at the moment. So that's about 1,200 kilometers away. Has quite a different culture. There's a beach, you know, it's a coastal city. And we had a little apartment, and it was really lots of fun doing different things, going to the beach, etc. But my boys actually weren't happy. They wanted to be grounded somewhere. They wanted to have tennis lessons, or they wanted all their toys. um, they didn't enjoy the adventure as much as Ahmed and I did. So we actually then made the decision to put up roots. So now we bought another place back in Johannesburg. We just bought something, that was more accessible in terms of nature, etc. So, we got that, and we now just travel for short periods on holiday, to different places when we can. We were quite sad about it because the whole adventure of world schooling and traveling was just so beautiful, and they really didn't like it, and they still don't really like traveling a lot. And it was difficult, but we knew we're not going to enjoy the adventure if we've got unhappy children. So I think it was the right decision to make, to just put up roots back here.
Yeah, I love how sensitive you were to their needs. And I guess sometimes that does involve some compromise. I lead a travel lifestyle as well with my child, and we've been on the road 6 years, but we've made Latin America really our base, and Peru our base for 3 years because we both love it. But there was a point in my son's development when he, from 10 to 13, no problems, but as soon as 14 and 15 hit, he had such a greater desire for community. And even though both of us loved traveling, the community aspect was such an important value to him. So we started looking into democratic schools and so forth, because I felt, okay, we can stop our travel because this is a greater need in our family right now. Even though it didn't work out, we actually found another solution. We decided instead of going there, we'll bring kids and community to us, which has been really wonderful for the last 3 years. And that has fulfilled, we found a solution that has fulfilled that desire to create and experience community. But as a parent, I can relate to each one of your stories so deeply. Actually, I want to ask this panel another question, and then after this question, we'll go ahead and take a short break. But the question to this panel is, can you share how the unschooling lifestyle has offered you the opportunity to really reevaluate what's important to you as the adults? We're dealing with all the paradigm of beliefs that we grew up with. How has unschooling allowed you to shift and reevaluate what you once held as valuable or important?
Now, what I was thinking about is that one thing that shifting to an unschooling perspective has done for me is to view, like, when I had 3 children, 3 under 3, it was just like the kids are this unit and I just got to keep them under control. And, it was just survival mode. And one thing that unschooling has done for me is, like, I still have little children now, those little children that are older now, and I have a new group of little children, but it's enabled me to see them as individuals and as individual whole people, instead of, this product I have to fix. And it's also kind of helped me to reevaluate, my relationships in all kinds of areas, like with my husband and with my friends and stuff like that, and to be, thinking more about our interactions in terms of a relationship that I'm cultivating and that I'm sharing with somebody, rather than, especially with my children, this product that I'm fixing and molding and stuff like that. Because it dawned on me, I don't want anyone to see me that way. I don't want somebody to look at me and be like, oh, if we just fix this little bit and that sort of thing. And I thought, how can I look at my children that way? They're unique individuals, and we're on this journey together, and we're figuring these things out together. And so, that paradigm shift, which, you know, came about as, you know, I started to be more open about natural learning and stuff like that, has really enriched our lives in just so many different ways.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And I would guess that, EJ, you have something to add to this. So I'm going to hand the floor over to you.
For me, I would say that in this brief unschooling journey so far, I've learned to see the world not as a unit, but as something that we co-create every time we encounter it. I mean, and it's beautiful to think of it that way, because that means every time my daughter encounters it, I mean, she is co-creating, which means there is so much more possibilities, and we don't have to box in everything into the binaries of right and wrong and yes and no. And there are so many more possibilities, which is encouraging to think that the world has that to offer, and we have something to also offer the world in turn. I mean, it's not take, but it's a process. And this probably has helped me hold on to wanting to go further in this process with my daughter and any future kids too.
It's absolutely beautiful. I love that. And Zakia, did you have something that you wanted to add about, you know, how unschooling helped you reevaluate what's important to you?
So our philosophy is, you know, based on these three tenets of love, unconditional love, of respect, and of acceptance. And, you know, initially I always saw that as that was my relationship to my children. I never really realized until, you know, much later that applies to me too, you know, that I need to accept myself. So, you know, that self-growth that comes with realizing it's not only about your kids, it's about yourself as well. So I think that has enriched my relationship with my partner, with my family as well. And also it's helped me to just breathe, you know. There was always this sense of who are they going to be and what are they going to become, and what if they don't want to go out there and really do things and they just want to be a beach bum, or, you know, and it helped me to accept that, hey, that's okay, you know, whoever you meant to be and want to be, it's okay. And then when I was okay with whoever they wanted to be, I started saying, I'm going to be okay with who I am. So it really, yes, I think the self-growth and the self-acceptance that came with that has really enriched my life, as well as, you know, and I find it really, it's one of the things that has the most impact on me is just that understanding.
Wonderful, thank you. And this was a wonderful round of answers, and I feel so inspired by each one of you. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and take a break now, and we'll be back after this.
So in terms of, you know, trying to think about some advice for parents, is you simply need to trust children, and we need to respect their freedom. We need to understand that, again, children are highly capable. And for example, I know young people who don't get a choice in the types of foods they eat, and adults seem to justify that by saying, well, we know better. But it's not the case that adults always know better. And you know, we make poor eating choices, and young people make poor eating choices. But again, we have to give them the freedom to learn about what these choices do to their body. And I learned quite a bit with my younger daughter when she was eating certain foods, and we gave her the freedom to do that. And so she figured out on her own how it impacted and affected her body, and it was actually quite remarkable to see and witness, to the point where one morning she's, you know, and now she's consistently saying, Dad, I think I better have some more bran flakes, because how many, this is when she was around 2, she had made this connection that something wasn't working properly, and so when she was going to the bathroom, it was a bit of a struggle for her. And I know all kinds of some might consider useless facts, but when you go to the bathroom, you need to evacuate violently, and essentially, she just wasn't evacuating violently. So what she needed to do is to become more in tune with her body, and I think that was such a powerful lesson for her to learn. That wait a minute, there is a connection between the types of foods that I eat and my body, and she made those connections. And now, like I said, she comes up and she says, "Dad, I think I better have a bit more bran flakes for breakfast this morning." And so I think that's a very powerful thing, and young people are capable of making these decisions. Same thing with sleeping, for instance, deciding when they need to go to sleep. We have to ensure that schooling is not a compulsory thing. Young people need to have choices, and I know so many young people who go to school and really don't want to be there, and they hate the fact that they need to go to school. And so there are things that people do to facilitate this, and if they really, really want their children to have this freedom, and they respect the fact that their children don't want to school, they go to great lengths in order to try to ensure that it works out for their own context, situation, family. And it may be more difficult for some than others, but I've always been impressed by where there's a will, there's a way, and people who've actually stepped up to do this, even though it was a bit more difficult in their own context, in their own lives, to make it work. But people have been able to do that. And other simple examples, like my daughter signed up for soccer in the summer, and she thought, well, I don't really like this, and we spent a bit of money to get her signed up and to start playing soccer. But when she decided she didn't want to go, we said to her, well, that's fine. If you don't want to go, then there's no need for you to go. It's your life, it's your decision, and if you're not enjoying it and it's not what you thought it would be, then why would we force you to go? And there were other friends of hers who didn't have that luxury, and their parents forced them to go regardless. And the parents said, well, look, I know they cry every day before they go, but once they're there, they seem to be happy with the situation, and so we continue to force them to go. And I think it's sad that children don't have these freedoms to make these own decisions on their lives, because their body is telling them that they're in situations where they don't feel comfortable and they don't want to be in. And again, if they don't feel like being there, then why would we force them to be there? It seems to make little sense that's the case. And they're, again, very capable of making these types of determinations. So they need to decide, what and whether they want to pursue a particular activity. And I also think that it's very important that I've had conversations with people who've been unschooled and are now adults, or been to free schools and alternative schools and are now adults. And I ask them, and I say, how did you feel when you were in those situations? And so many of them say to me, well, we didn't even realize that we were in a free school or an unschooled. That just was what our upbringing was like. And so, again, young people are so capable that I have very sophisticated philosophical conversations with my children. And recently I just said to them, look, you are very fortunate to be in a situation where you get to unfold, which is a holistic term that I really like, unfold in ways that you feel most comfortable unfolding in. And the fact that you actually have say in how you run your lives. And we were talking in a very, again, they're 3 and 5 when we were having this conversation about not all children have that luxury and that freedom. And we were talking about some of the, our young friends who are forced to eat certain foods, are forced to eat at the table and are not allowed to leave until they finish their foods, are forced to go to schooling when they don't like to or would rather not be going to schooling, are forced to play certain sports when they're not really inclined or willing or want to play those sports, and so on. And I think what we need to do is we need to remember that we have to have more of a democratic environment for our young people, that a participatory democracy where they have a say in how they're raised and in what way they, and what things they choose to do or choose not to do. It has to be up to them. And we can't make these determinations for them. If we want them to learn about democracy and democratic living and to learn about freedom, well, we have to give them those opportunities when they're young to practice freedom, and that way responsibility comes, and so on and so forth. And so, I've witnessed this in my children, and I've witnessed it in other unschooling families, and it just always makes me very confident in speaking about this to all of you, because you get a sense of how it is possible, and it's not just a theoretical ideal that you can't achieve, but people are actually doing this. And again, it's powerful if you have opportunities to trust your children to make these types of decisions. You'll see how they'll really unfold in powerful ways that you would not even imagine. And they are capable. That's the big thing, right? I mean, it's as simple as that. They're very, very capable of doing these things.
And we're back. For the second hour, I want to shift gears a little bit. I want to address something that is unique to everybody's unschooling experience, no matter where you are in the world. But we're lucky to have a very international panel with us tonight. And so I want to ask, what role does history and the role of culture, what role do those two things play in your unschooling journey?
So for our family, we've been kind of more nomadic and traveling for about 5 years now. And before that, we were pretty rooted in suburban Georgia, USA. And so when we kind of uprooted, and our first big move was to the United Arab Emirates. We lived in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi in the city of Al Ain, and we lived there for 3 years. And that's when kind of we first started beginning down our journey of homeschooling and then unschooling and stuff like that. And what's funny is, like, thinking about history, is that over those 3 years, it ended up our American children knew more history about the UAE and more about, the Emirates of the UAE and different cultural aspects of, where they were living, the culture they were living in, than in American culture. And so we would fly home to Georgia and stay with my in-laws. That's where I'm staying right now. And a lot of what my husband and I wanted to do when we flew home was to, we lived here for 10 years and didn't see much of what's around us. And then, so now every time we fly in back to Georgia, we're complete tourists, and we want to see like this historical monument and go see all this interesting stuff and talk about it. And, my husband and I have been talking about, like, we want to do kind of this American history road tour because, our kids are kind of out of that cultural aspect of, their culture and stuff like that, and seeing that. And so that's been a kind of an interesting aspect to see develop. And then when we lived in Chivak, Alaska, it's American, but it's not like the rest of America. It's really remote, and it's a Native Alaskan village, and the life there is more far removed from suburban America than I would say our life in Abu Dhabi was. And so when we lived there, like, the culture was completely different. Like, we didn't own a car. We owned a 4-wheeler and a snow machine, and, they got to see a lot of the Chupik culture and hear the Chupik language and see a lot of like native dance stuff and their artwork and stuff like that. And so they were kind of immersed in that culture. And so, I don't know, a lot of it's just kind of interweaving and, wherever we are. And a lot of the stuff, like where we live, we kind of just let it be and don't, push where the culture of where we are. We just let them be immersed in it and let, stick whatever sticks. But my husband and I do kind of, I like to bring in resources in our home, like about American history, and like, strew different stuff about, our American history. And I like to also, like, it's just a random thing, but like our TV in our home is usually not a TV. We just have it hooked up to a computer, and I do the screensaver of like family history pictures and stuff like that, of like when you were born and this was your 5th birthday and stuff like that. And so, we have kind of an ongoing thing about talking about a family history and, you know, knowing your birth story and where we lived when this was your birthday and that sort of thing that, you know, we like to keep an ongoing discussion about. So I hope that kind of touches on where you were going with this.
So South Africa is interesting because, so I've lived in apartheid days and in free days, and my kids are the first born-free generation in our family. And it's, you know, it's so interesting because like sort of Soweto came on the map when a bunch of school kids were protesting against the Bantu education system, and it was, you know, when the police opened fire on children, and it was quite horrific, and that's how we got onto the world map. And we just had June 16 celebrations or memorials recently, you know, about just less than a month ago, 2 weeks ago. And, you know, it was such a difficult conversation to have with my children because I showed them pictures, you know, there's this famous photograph of the child, of somebody carrying another child running, you know, talking to them about the, you know, that education system, and then saying, okay, but we've like opted out of this, and what are we saying in terms of for the country? Is it a good way to go? What do we support? Their reforms? What are we saying about the current school system? So, you know, that sort of complicates things. And that was one of the things I got opposition from, that, you know, we had segregated education. Now we've got an open education system. Why would you not join and participate and help it grow? And then, you know, now it's 20 years later. So that was 1976. So, you know, it's 20 years later, and a lot of the education system is still bad. And so we're trapped in the cycle. So for a lot of Black people, they are wanting a good education system, this education system that only whites had access to. And we saying, but that's a bad education system. Like, why don't you want something that, you know, something that decolonizes your mind, that looks at African writers and embraces African knowledge and history? Why are we fighting for some other culture's version of an education system? So there's, you know, so now we have a situation where there's whoever can afford it, either, you know, travels really long distances to go to the good schools in the good suburbs, and then the people in the good suburbs send their kids to private schools, and then those that can't afford private schools then try to replicate the school system at home. And then there's us, you know, a radical bunch that have, you know, tossed it all out. And it's so complicated because our current school system is still very colonial. You know, you don't come out of that system with the deep respect for African writers, African revolutionaries. You know, the day, like, there's no celebration or commemorating the day like Steve Biko was killed, or people haven't read his works. So it's, you know, we're in such a difficult transition, and those questions from other sources also come about of what's wrong with our history and our culture, and, you know, where are we going, in what direction? And that kind of discussions then sometimes leads to kind of democratic schooling. So, you know, I don't know how it's going to turn out, but it's really difficult but really exciting here in terms of the discussions around education and what does an education mean and where does it take us, etc.
Okay. Now, I think I would, I love what Zakia just said, and it kind of applies to where I'm from too, because being from Africa and India, there's a lot of things that seem to overlap. And working in the university, we struggle with the phenomenon that she speaks of. Local is not valued anymore, and we want everything foreign. We want foreign authored books. We want our children to learn about trees that don't grow in our location. We want them to learn about things that they don't see. I mean, where is the snow falling? I mean, seriously. The point here is that we don't celebrate the value that lies with us, because in some aspects, we don't see any value in them. And I think that's a great revival that we need. We need to decolonize ourselves of that. We wear suits to our university I mean, it's Africa, it's hot. We're in Nigeria and it's hot. I mean, why would I wear a suit? I mean, if that was prescribed to me. And we have flamboyant outfits that celebrate our culture, but we've learned to demonize these cultures. And in many senses, even if you think of the medicines we take, our drugs, we prefer to buy the ones that are imported. And this is because we believe that the best comes from the West, and we've lost any value for our local traditions or our local cultures, or even the traditional medicines, which was part of my doctoral research. I mean, we have in the lab, I have seen that these decoctions or concoctions that they use to treat malaria locally are effective. But I mean, they don't have a package said made in so and so. And so as long as it's local, it has no value. And Bara and I have been recently rereading African work. I mean, the works of prominent African authors. And while she was talking, I remembered what Chimamanda Adichie said in her book, Half of a Yellow Sun. Her character, the lead character in the book, says to this young boy who is very eager to learn and is going to school, he says, I have to tell you a truth now. When you go to school, they're going to teach you a lot. And for this, there are actually two answers. One is the real answer, and the other is what you'd have to learn in order to get through to the next grade. I mean, it's amazing because who discovered this? I mean, the people, the indigents of that place probably knew that place existed for a very long time. But what we are taught in school is absolutely another story. So yes, I mean, it's a long journey to decolonize ourselves of this. And when you come over to India, I mean, we have the Education Act, which is the Rights to Education Act, where the government says that every child must be sent to school. And they, in a sense, are trying to make sure that we have a good economy and that the children are taken care of and their future is taken care of. But they are not looking, is this educational system serving the purpose? What is the purpose now? What is the reason for this? Are we just creating a line of conveyor belts, kids who say yes to everything, the yes sirs who would get a good job that does not benefit them in any way, and fit into society, which is just mainly for consumer purposes? So I mean, I love what Zakia said, and I totally resonate with that.
Absolutely beautiful answers, and I'm so inspired once again. Everybody on this panel brings this totally different perspective, but we all seem to be coming from the same place, and that to me is really beautiful. One of the questions that I ask to many of my panels is just what is the purpose of education? And I think it's important to ask this to this group of moms and international moms that are unschooling, because if we buy into the colonial definition of what the purpose is, well, we're not succeeding. But if we redefine what the purpose of education means, and I think it's more of a global perspective, then we're doing exactly what it is that we're providing the best opportunities for our children. So, EJ, why don't you, answer this question, since this question was inspired from what you were just saying. In your mind, what do you think the purpose of education is?
Wow. That's deep. To me, I think education is deeply personal, to each his own, and your environment will probably draw the map to what you would like to be educated on. I don't think there is any. I don't think there could ever be a format. I don't think we could come up with an unschooling format and say, yes, this is the standard, and if you follow this, you have perfectly unschooled your child. And so there couldn't be a box that we could conveniently put and say, this is the system that we follow, and this will apply to everyone. Everyone, the reason, there can't be just one reason for education, in fact. Yeah, we all would subscribe to different needs. What we would like to learn and why we would like to learn it might be absolutely different.
For us, I don't know. I mean, a lot of what I think about with education is just the thing that kind of gets you where you want to go, and everybody doesn't have the same place they want to go, so it's not the same for everyone. And so it's enriching, it's edifying, it's it's depending on where you're going is what you will need to take in and what you want to take in, and that's kind of what education is for us.
It's something I think about a lot. So let's I try to deconstruct it and see what does it mean for our lives. So the first thing is that oftentimes we confuse education with schooling. And and institutional learning. We also measure it in terms of papers and degrees, diplomas, certificates, etc. So if we agree that, okay, it's not any of those things, then we have to look at, okay, so what is it? And, for each person, it would mean something different. So I could theoretically say in our family, an education is a journey towards knowing yourself and being authentic and finding a space in the world where you can be you, instead of you trying to reformulate yourself so that you can fit into the world. So to create your own space rather than find, go into one of the predefined spaces. But then I also think, isn't that really just mindful, conscious living? Like, do we need a word it's something I think about. I don't have an answer and I don't have a definition. So I always think, why do we even need this word? In our house, I don't think about educating you or, you educating yourself to be yourself. It's just living mindfully, living consciously, living to your potential and living authentically. So I don't have an answer to what it means, but my question is, does the word really need to be there? Maybe we should just get rid of it.
Zakia, that is some very deep thinking and consideration, and I just love what you said.
I love what Zakia said, and it's just perfect. I mean, this is what happens with us on a daily basis. We have been labeled, and once you provide a label for something, you're not able to see beyond that. We have a saying that says, you name the color and you blind the eye, which is what happens. And if I tell you this is a red ball, you only remember red and ball, and you don't see the other possibilities that lie there. And that's exactly what's happening when we label our learning experience in education. We now start boxing it into categories, which is not fluid with life. I mean, learning is engaging the universe. It's fun, it's play. I mean, you can't just label it. You have to just leave it to be fluid. And I mean, that was just beautiful to hear.
Thank you so much. You know, we've been talking about education, unschooling, and the journey from the inside of our family, right? And that includes parents and the child's perspective and so forth. And again, we're talking about how we interact in the world around us, but I want to actually address how the world around us influences and affects the way that we continue our unschooling journey.
Because the outside is still stuck in this schooling paradigm, you know, that's the dominant story, the dominant ideology. So it plays on us. It also plays on our kids, who constantly have to explain themselves. So there was a point when my daughter asked me, what grade is she in? And I said, you're not in any grade. And she said, but so-and-so said you have to be in a grade. So then I said, okay, well, then you in grade life. So thereafter, you know, and sort of when people meet children, they want to, you know, they don't know what to talk to them about. They only know them as school kids. So it's so often the first question. What grade are you in, or are you enjoying school, or why aren't you at school today? And so that had to, you know, she needed an answer. She needed to know how to answer that. And she then understood that what she's doing is quite different. So hence grade life was born, but it still requires, you know, some kind of explanation. And then given that this culture is still schooling dominant, I think I'm not always comfortable with the word unschooling, you know. I'm always wondering what's a better word for it. And I've asked this on the group, and we had some great suggestions. Like, well, I thought maybe co-living would be a good option. That didn't fly because everybody co-lives. They just impose on each other, and, you know, some people force you to go to school, and etc. And there was authentic living, but, you know, people who send their kids to school also can say they're being authentic, etc. And so my eldest son said to me, you know, Mom, as long as there's something called school, you stuck with the word unschooling, because really what we do is anything but school. So, you know, we, in some ways, responding to a dominant culture in every situation, in every different culture now has this concept of a school. We also sort of on the, you know, we have to sell ourselves a little bit more, since we don't have direct answers like what grade we are in, etc. So, you know, in a way, you know, you've sort of cheated, because you can't draw on the broader story to enrich your experience. You have to define it, and define your own path yourself. And it's you know, it's what's that word? Something territory. What's the word? It's new territory. You know, there's no path. So there's a word I'm looking for. Uncharted territory. Thank you. Yes, you know, it's uncharted territory, and it's sometimes it's hostile. I mean, not for me personally, because my kids are grown and they sell themselves very well. They sell the concept of unschooling well, because people see them and say, oh, okay, so you are socialized, you can hold a conversation, you know quite a bit about the world, etc. So they're okay. But, you know, when I see a lot of the new parents coming in, it's agonizing for them, the kind of resistance, the kind of questions, the kind of self-doubt it builds into them. So we're not in a, you know, that the other story is not nurturing. It's so antagonistic. It's not allowing us to co-live in many ways. And I think that is our challenge. But I think how we get around it is we connect globally as an alternative voice. And so, yeah, that's what I love about For the Love of Learning show, is that building that bridges and the connections for all of us.
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely. I think it's a similar story here too for us. Like I earlier said, we come from a very collectivist culture, and so when our daughter was born, in fact, when I conceived, my aunt came up to me and said, you know, getting admission into a good school in India is very difficult, but I know a few people in administration, and I'm going to put in a good word so that, you know, she could get into the best schools, and you need to start saving up because you'd have to put in a donation. And this is for, I was just about 6 months pregnant at that time, and that's how serious education is in India. I mean, you find parents lining up in front of schools for the unborn child, waiting to collect a form so that they could start gathering the money for the donation to send their child into that school. So, I mean, on the cultural side of it, it's terrible, and education is valued here extremely. You see parents working so hard in order to provide to send these kids to school, believing that these grades and the degrees that they get will earn them a better life. And it's very difficult to help them see differently, or even for them to understand that there is a possibility that there could be life without school. And I'm constantly dealing with questions like, why would you do this to your child? I mean, you guys could send her to any school of your choice. Why would you choose to destroy her life this way? So it's a constant. I don't think it would ever end, and I think Alethea would have to answer these questions too, as in, don't you want to school? Because right now my aunt constantly, she's 2 years old, but she constantly reminds her to ask mommy which school she's going to. So you have these subtle messages from behind, you know, trying to get the child to see that, you know, there's value in going to school. So I believe that would be one a serious constraint as she grows up, the messages that she receives from outside. And I look forward to seeing how it shapes out as she grows up that way.
I don't know. Over the years, one of the things I figured out is that I don't know. I don't ask questions, and I don't engage people in the conversation about, you know, we're unschooling or even homeschooling or anything like that, like to try to convince people or anything like that. Like, if somebody comes to me and has questions to me, I'm happy to talk about it over and over again. But like for relatives or just my friends, I don't have the conversation to convince them, because for me that opens it up like they have a say in what we do, and they don't. And so, you know, we just kind of go and do what we do. If they want to ask us questions, I'm happy to respond to that, but I'm not, you know, I personally don't open it up and say, what do you think of this? Because, well, your opinion doesn't really matter. I mean, I love you, but, you know, this is our family and this is what we're doing. So that's kind of the route as far as, you know, navigating the discussion of all this. I mean, I'm really passionate about it, and I love to talk about it. And on one hand, I would love to have these conversations, but on the other hand, you know, it's not up for debate. So that's kind of where we've gone with, you know, kind of navigating the society's pressure and stuff like that. And I don't know, it's interesting. You talk about like the little ones that it feels like as soon as they're born, you know, let's get them into school and shuffle them all into everything. Cause you know, that was weird to me too. Cause like even before homeschooling or unschooling was on the radar, I was just like, wait, this person's too little. And, you know, they can't go yet. And so for me, that was just kind of, you know, a natural instinct of like, you know, hold on, what are we doing here? And so I don't know, I've really kind of, I don't know, taken a relaxed approach to, you know, how I interact with unschooling and stuff like that. I mean, I write about it and I talk about it in a general sense, but when I'm talking one-on-one with somebody, I really wait for them to open up the conversation, because it's such a big paradigm shift that to just kind of, you know, dump it in their lap feels, makes them feel defensive and like they're hurt, you know, what do you mean I'm hurting my child, and that sort of thing. So I really take a relaxed approach in that sense.
Yeah, I think these are all wonderful examples of how the outside does influence our process inside. So this leads me to my final question for this panel. And this has been an incredible conversation and very enlightening and very inspiring. So what I'd like to know from the panel for the final question is, could you please share with us one of your aha moments that happened that really affirms that this unschooling journey has been the right journey for you? And we'll go to EJ first.
Well, I think for me and my family as such, every day has been an aha moment since we started this journey. I'm not really able to pick one particular event, and it's just looking at Alethea growing up and knowing that we are ready to take the risk to ensure that she has a whole world of possibilities. That itself is an aha moment for us. I mean, we enjoy seeing the person that she's blossoming into, and we just pray for the courage to continue to tread this path as we go. And I mean, everything, every question she has to ask, every small thing she does is an aha moment for me. I mean, that's the way I would see it. So, I mean, the journey has been full of such moments.
Absolutely beautiful. And I'm going to go back to Tami next and put you on the spot and ask you to share with us one of your aha moments.
I mean, for us, it's a lot of little things, like, you know, when we first moved overseas, we just started homeschooling, and, you know, I had this whole thing planned out, but, you know, a big international move, just all of that gets set aside. And so we did nothing and, you know, for like 2 months and stuff like that. And then I remember at the end of those 2 months, you know, looking at the kids and looking at what they're doing, and I'm like, nobody stopped learning. We're still, you know, all these kind of amazing things are coming up and amazing conversations. And for me, that was, you know, like a moment where, I don't know, I really thought about, like, what am I doing with the curriculum I picked out, and what am I, and, you know, kind of to compare that to, you know, when we had frustration moments where I was trying to force them to do a curriculum or something like that, versus, you know, we were just living our normal lives, experiencing this new place, and, you know, in the mundane and the fantastic, all of it, and we're still growing and learning, and, you know, new things are coming out of it. And so for me, that was a big thing that kind of really sparked me to kind of relax and to kind of start looking at, you know, that all of this doesn't have to be this huge big pressure that I have to get in right now, that I can just, you know, enjoy the moment, enjoy the little things, and it all starts to tie together. So and that's just like one thing. A lot of that is a reoccurring moment of, you know, especially, you know, I think, I don't know, like coming back to Georgia, suburbia, and being around a lot of my friends, their kids go to school, or they do more of a school at home type thing. And so a lot of the people, like from my American circle of friends that I know in real life, do more of a schoolish, compulsory schooling type of model. And so a lot of that, when I get in that environment, you know, it gives you pause and makes you feel like, am I doing the right thing? Are we doing okay? And then, you know, my kids, God bless them, they'll, you know, I'll see them do this amazing thing, and I think, I didn't teach them that. And, you know, they figured that out all on their own, and I'm like, we're fine, I can relax. So
Tami, you mentioned twice the ability to relax. Does that equal trust as well? You're trusting that your process is working. Relax equals trust, maybe?
Absolutely. Yeah, and developing trust. And hi, this is Luke. And really, I don't know, trusting the process and trusting that, you know, they're going to figure this out.
Oh, and look what I found.
He just got back from camp. That's one of the things we love to do in Georgia, that I see camp.
Hi, Luke.
All right. You ready for me to have my conversation? I'm listening. Say hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you for joining us, Luke. What a treat.
Okay, ask me that question again. I totally got derailed.
No, it was perfect. And it was perfect timing. I was just asking you if there was a relationship between relaxing and trusting.
Oh, yes. Being able to trust the child, like that, for me, that's an overarching thing that makes it work, is trusting them that they know where they're going and they know, and they'll get it, you know, and it's not important that that it's in my timing or what the world's timing is, but that it'll work out.
Awesome. Why don't we pop on over to Zakia and ask you the final question. Please go ahead and share one of your aha moments with us.
That's a tough question, Lainie. You know, one moment. And I have 3 kids, so I'll be in lots of trouble, hey, if I just pick on one. I think, you know, nothing comes to mind now in terms of moments. I'm sure they will as soon as we signed out. But there are things that definitely help me to understand that I'm on the right path. And the one is just seeing my children happy. You know, I just think that is, for them to be happy now, as at whatever age they are, is so much more important than what they're going, you know, being unhappy now for some later as an adult career kind of thing. So that they're happy, for me, you know, is great. And then there are other schooly kind of things. So definitely when they learned how to read, the boys, I thought, okay, if they can teach themselves how to read, then there's nothing that which is quite complex, so then there's nothing that they actually can't learn later on in life independently. And it's something that I always remind them about, you know. Not that they need reminding, they're fairly independent in that. So that's the schooly aspect, you know, even the understanding of like maths and fractions, etc. Yeah, and you know, I've come out of the school system, so that is still my wiring. It did give me a sense of comfort and know that, hey, this is okay. But when I really was glad that we started unschooling is when I saw my own growth, my own acceptance, my own trust, not only in them, in myself, you know, in life itself. Then I knew that this, you know, it's such a reactionary word, but it's such a rich way of living. And that's when I knew, when I was really glad that we chose this path.
Absolutely beautiful. And for somebody who said that they had a hard time really coming up with an answer, that was a very eloquent response. So thank you. And actually, we'll pop on back over to you and ask you for any final remarks, and go ahead and share your, you know, if you have links or websites that you want to share, now's the time to do it. Zakia, the floor is yours again.
Okay, so I have 2 closing remarks. The one is, you know, wherever you are in the world, come to Unschoolers Camp at some point in your life. It's really beautiful. It would be great to interact with a broader group of people, so that it's cheap and beautiful here. So that's the one thing I want to say. The other thing I want to say is that we don't need to live with fear. Fear of the future, fear of rules and legalities. We need to live rich lives, because we're not just alive, we have to be living as well. So those are the living a rich life, a mindful life, being happy. Those are the things that should guide our decisions and our views, whether it's about technology or whether it's about reading or whether they can write eloquently. We don't need to be afraid of the level that our kids are at. We need to look at, are they living richly for themselves for today? Because if you can be rich for today and be mindful of how you live today, then as an adult, you're also going to be mindful and live a rich life. And that's how we will transform our societies. We will, there's a video called How Wolves Change Rivers in the Yellowstone Forest. I don't know if anybody's watched it. But if you do, they had such a huge impact on the Yellowstone Forest when they introduced wolves. And we now call our kids, or not just my kids, the unschooling kids, we call them the wolves, because we truly think that they're going to change lots of aspects of society to make it richer, to make it okay to actually choose happiness over other things, over consumerism, etc. So my closing message would be that our choices are guided by happiness, by hope, by love, and that we don't give in to the fear.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful closing remark. And we'll pop back on over to Tami next.
The main thing that I try to emphasize to parents that I talk to that are just anywhere on their journey of exploring unschooling or anything like that is to just look at your child as an individual and just feed whatever nurtures their soul. Just, feed into that and, get to know your child, and that's where you want to be. That's the sweet spot, and just to let go and trust that of all of these things, of all of the different schooling methods, your relationship with your child and helping them to have a good foundation and feel secure in who they are is the biggest predictor of them living a happy, thriving life. It's not that they have all these educational, check boxes ticked. It's that, they feel secure in who they are, and they feel loved, and they feel, that they can go into the world and do what they want to do. And so feed into that and be relaxed about all the other stuff. That will take care of itself if you can focus on what's really important. And I blog occasionally at starryeyedpragmatist.com, very occasionally. I have 6 kids, so. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Tami. And finally, we'll go to EJ. EJ, the floor is yours. Share any closing remarks, thoughts, final words, whatever you'd like to leave with this audience.
Thank you, Lainie. Before I say anything, I must say that I'm so totally refreshed and inspired by, 3 amazing moms here who are unschooling their kids. And it's absolutely enriching to hear your experiences, and it's encouraging for someone like me who's just starting off. And I wish other moms would feel the way I'm feeling, because absolutely today has been a blessing. And what I would just like to say to close would be the universe is diverse, rich, abundant, and it has so much to offer us. For long we've boxed ourselves in success, failure, and in this day and age, I honestly believe, and through experience, that one's true education probably could be being wrong or failing. And to find that courage to do that would be absolutely freeing to anyone who dares to try. So, I just encourage anyone to just do it today. Fail and see the wonders that lie beyond that. It's amazing. Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you all for being a part of this panel. Again, I'm so honored to have shared this space and time with you all, and I've learned so much. And I want to thank Nina for putting together this incredible panel. She's such an incredible producer and a friend, a dear friend to me. And finally, I want to thank the station, Mel and Biggie over at Conscious Consumer Network for agreeing to share these beautiful dialogues. I'm so grateful that we have a forum to broadcast on. So wherever you are and whatever you do, continue doing it always for the love of learning.
If you really had to make a difference on a large scale with minimal resources, how would you go about it? Have you ever dared to dream of doing that which seems impossible? On a planet steeped with corruption and destruction, the question beckons, how do we change it? Media has a far-reaching impact on people and has been used to manipulate humanity into our current destructive patterns. In order to affect people into moving into constructive patterns of behavior, we need to construct a new paradigm of media. Conscious Consumer Network has been created with the explicit intention of giving the amazing truth-seeking, solutions-orientated, alternative media a place to fully realize their true potential with a cutting-edge, high-tech professional media platform. In turn, some of the greatest freedom-seeking hearts and souls of our time have realized the true potential of what has been created and have come together to provide their insight and inspiration on CCN. Conscious Consumer Network has become a unique, interactive information and educational network which provides a free-to-view, live-stream, ultra-high-definition channel to the world and features 25 live shows a week and growing with the addition of multiple language broadcasts. CCN has features comparable with mainstream media, such as being able to pause and rewind broadcasts whilst being live streamed. Catch up on missed or previous broadcasts, now available from CCN high-definition downloads. You can now purchase a high-definition download of your favorite CCN show from ethymarket.com. Support free and independent media by becoming a monthly pledger. This can be done with a monthly pledge of €10, which will allow you unlimited access to CCN's high-definition downloads, which hosts a back catalogue of over 250 shows, which have been aired since the launch of CCN on the 1st of January 2015. In order to keep CCN free of corporate sponsorship and advertising, CCN has launched the Pledge 300 campaign. This is a realistic goal with the hopes of securing a minimum of 300 people who will each pledge €10 a month. With this number, we can continue to grow and operate and potentially expand into a second foreign language channel. Help keep alternative media in the hands of the people. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.